So now that you've populated your budget, you want to actually use it during the month. So there are two ways to track your budget. I'll show you the way that I use it, but you may want to use the second way. So what I do is, as soon as I get my check, I will pay all the bills that are due related to that check. So instead of, say for this example, waiting for the 27th, on the 15th when I get paid, I will pay my cell phone bill that day. So that way, because I already know that I have enough in my check to cover all of these bills because I have planned to do so, I pay them immediately. And that's also, well, for the exception of the rent, because remember that's not due until the first. And also, as of this check, you don't have the full 1250. So, with the exception of rent slash mortgage, I pay everything the day I get the check, and that way everything's always on time. So I would pay that immediately. Another thing that I do is that, you know how when you pay your credit card bill or any bill for that matter, you'll get a confirmation number. I always add my confirmation number. So say if the confirmation number for me paying my Verizon bill was XYZ, I will click on this cell, I'll put insert note, and I'll just put confirmation number XYZ. So that way I have a list of all my confirmation numbers. The reason why I do this is because there was one bill I paid and they never had like evidence that they received the payment, but I had my confirmation number and I was able to have it tracked that way. So I always just by habit save my confirmation number. So that's just a tip. And then after I pay everybody that I need to pay, I also make sure that if there are any savings goals that I have, that I address those also. So if I was paying for this, or saving for this Mexico trip, and if I had a separate savings account that it was going to, which I do for my savings goals, I would also, on the date of my check, make that $100 transfer to that respective account. So that way I know that I've taken care of all my bills and I've taken care of myself in terms of my goals. Now what's left to be, and also the investment. So if I had an automatic investment plan or however you do your investments, I would make sure that the savings and the investments were done on that day. So what's left after all of that are these categories here. That's the discretionary spending. That's the amounts that can fluctuate each month. So that's what's left to be spent between the day I receive the check and the day I get the next check. So this 550, which you see also in the corner, the sum of these is 550. That's what I need to track between now and my next check. So the way I do it is that I do it by category. So on this tab, you see those same category names: clothing, entertainment, blah, 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 and the amounts that I set aside for them. And then as the days go on, say if I go to ShopRite, then I will put here, ShopRite, January 16th, I spent $56. I make it a negative because the beginning number is positive. So this is to show that it's a deduction. So I spent $56 and now I have $94 left. So that way I always know how much I have in my categories left. So you can do that with all of these. The other thing that I use this sheet for, or this tab for, is to track credit card balances and payments. The reason why I don't use that debt tab that I mentioned in the last video is because the formulas in that debt tab assume a steady decrease. So say like your student loan bill, that's not increasing because you're not borrowing additional student loan funds. Whatever you initially borrowed that's the beginning amount that doesn't change. It only decreases every month as you make payments. For credit cards, you might make new payments during the month and purchase new things. So because that balance is always changing, I don't even bother tracking those on the debt tab because I would have to be updating formulas every month. I just don't want to do that. So I instead track it on this tab. So if my beginning credit card balance, I want to say it was a Capital One card that we were paying here. Say if the beginning balance when January started was $1,000. So that's beginning balance here. What I would do is once I make the payment, so we had budgeted $120. Once that $120 payment is made on the 15th, I would do a negative $120 because again, we're decreasing the total balance. And I would just put paid on 1/15/21, and then if whatever confirmation number they gave me, I will put that. I would right click, insert the note, put the confirmation number, and then you see that the remaining balance is now $880 as a result of that payment. Now, if the separate categories such as clothing, entertainment, and things like that are irrelevant to you and you just want to keep track of the total amount that you allocated for yourself, you can use the second tracking option. So what you would do is you would start with your income from that check, which was the 2000, and then you would initially populate it with all the mandatory payments that have to go out and the payments for yourself, which were the investment and the savings goals. Now, just like that first tracking option, you want to enter everything as a negative to show that it's a deduction from that initial 2000 that you received. And you'll see that after you took out your savings, your investments, and the mandatory expenses, you have that remainder of 550. And as you make your different expenses between now and the next paycheck, you would just write them here. So again, if you went to ShopRite, let me just copy and paste that amount here. When you did that $56 purchase, then you see that now you have $494 to spend until your next check, and so on and so forth. So you can just put, instead of using the categories, you can do it this way where you just put all of your expenses in one place. Now let me just change the format. Okay. And yeah, so you can use this option also. The last thing that I do is carry forward my budget. So remember, this sheet is tracking only the January 15th paycheck. So when I got paid on January 31st, what I would do is create a new tracking tab. So I would do that by duplicating this sheet. And then typically I will rename it. So I will rename this something like T for tracking 131. And then I would update the paycheck date. And then I would also update, well, I would erase anything from the prior check. And then I will make sure that these categories represent what I budgeted. So I would double check my January tab to make sure what I budgeted for clothing, entertainment, groceries, and things like that. And then update this sheet so that this tab, so that it shows, it reflects what I budgeted for that specific check. And another thing I'll do is that I will carry forward any of the credit card balances. So if as of the last check, I had, what was it, $880 balance on my credit card, I will make sure that the beginning balance on the January 31st tracking tab is that 880. So here I will put equals, and then I would get that 880. And so now we have that starting balance of 880, and we're starting with the correct balance. And then another thing I do with credit cards is that I always go on my bank website, because I know that if you have a balance, if you're not starting with a zero balance, then you most likely had interest that was charged in the previous month. So I would just go on my bank account and make sure that 880 is actually the balance, and make sure there's not any interest. And if there is interest, I would just write that amount here. So if it was like, say, $32 interest, I'll put that to make sure that it had the correct ending balance of 912 or whatever it is that the bank's website says that the credit card balance is.